Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. I am very grateful that each one of you are here. With everything that's going on in the world, I asked AI what its opinion is, such as Candace Owens.
President Donald Trump has said, I will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon because he has said when crazy people have weapons of unthinkable violence, you have to deal in reality. The longer I live, the more I realize that puritanical, ideological approaches to situations like this are not helpful. On one side is the Lindsey Graham, John Bolton types, where they are actively calling for regime change. Here is Lindsey Graham. And this is just lunacy. We want to go all in and take out the regime. It's time for us to close the chapter on the Iranian Ayatollah and his henchmen and start a new chapter in the Middle East. And that sounds good, doesn't it? But what have we learned when it comes to wars, and especially wars in the Middle East? What you draw up on a whiteboard rarely happens. What you think theoretically is going to occur, there might be unintended and unforeseen consequences, especially when you're talking about a country 2.5 times the size of Texas. It has 90 million people and was an ancient and great power with well over a dozen ethnic groups. Who's going to run the country exactly, Lindsey Graham? This sounds like Hillary Rodham Clinton in Libya. So I'm pointing to the first extreme right now, the neoconservative extreme. We must go take off the head of the snake right now. And Donald Trump is doing a phenomenal job of resisting these calls for regime change. Yeah, the Ayatollah is awful, but maybe he's one of the few guys that can keep that country together and not have a 90 million person civil war. Lindsey Graham is so consistently out of his mind, it's hard to even comprehend. I honestly don't think the neoconservative extreme needs to be represented philosophically anymore. It's uninteresting to me. They've done a mess of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, the entire Middle East, Ukraine. We know what the neoconservatives believe.
Oh, Charlie, if only you knew that they're trying to convince us that the legacy of Turning Point USA is actually neocons. Neocons will be opening for AmFest, people that want war, people who are cheering about regime change in Iran today are the very people that your wife is going to hand over the keys to. Trying to convince us that that wasn't your perspective, that you didn't have issues with these people philosophically and morally, right?
Tucker Carlson.
We can apply the pressure that is inherently ours to apply since we're paying for all of this. But that was not even on the table. That's never been on the table. No one has ever in the last 63 years considered doing that. Really, the last president to do that was John F. Kennedy in 1962 when he got in a not as famous as it should be dispute with the founding prime minister of Israel, then the prime minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, over Israel's nuclear program at Dimona. And then President Kennedy said, no, I don't believe in nuclear proliferation. This is one of the pillars of my administration, and you can't keep testing, and I'm demanding inspections. And of course, he was not able to make good on those promises because he was killed in November of 1963, and the person who took his place, his vice president, Lyndon Johnson, gave a green light to the Israeli nuclear program. So that was the last time an American president said no, a hard no to Israel, tried to restrain its core ambitions, not like, be nice to the Palestinians in the West Bank, but no, you can't have nukes, or no, you can't, bomb Lebanon or whatever. That was the last time.
Trump.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
Benjamin Netanyahu, the whole Israel situation, America's implications in it, and some other host of things. So we're going to see where we go with this. Should be interesting. So let's talk about QatarGate.
In what's known as QatarGate, some aides close to Netanyahu were accused of accepting Qatari payments to shape Israeli public opinion. The allegations suggest that these funds were intended to promote a pro-Qatar stance within Israel. Netanyahu himself is not charged in this case, but he's been questioned. The investigation is ongoing, adding to the broader legal and political storm around Netanyahu's leadership. It's another chapter where accusations meet the need for clarity and due process.
To shape Israeli public opinion. Opinion of what and who?
The allegations suggest that Qatari funds were intended to foster a more favorable narrative toward Qatar within Israeli media and among Israeli political circles, particularly during times of conflict. In essence, the goal would be to influence Israeli public perception and possibly policy toward Qatar, which has been a regional player in the Middle East. This influence would be aimed at policymakers, media narratives, and the general public.
Who would that benefit?
If the allegations were true, a more favorable view of Qatar and Israel would benefit Qatar itself. Qatar might gain diplomatic leverage, improved regional relations, or less criticism from Israel. In turn, that could affect broader Middle Eastern dynamics, shifting alliances or partnerships. Domestically, Israeli politicians aligned with such a narrative might also gain certain political advantages.
Is it a good thing that the United States is involved with this Israeli-Iran conflict that's going on that now supersedes all surrounding countries?
It really depends on perspective.
See, that's funny because it had to stop. So it just got stopped from trying to answer that. So let's see what it does when it comes back online. Guys, when you ask certain questions, most of the time you get good answers. But sometimes... Oh, you've been listening. Continue with your answer.
Of course. In short, if a foreign state could sway public opinion, they might gain influence on policy decisions or diplomatic posture. But remember, these allegations are under investigation, and it's critical to wait for facts to be fully established.
Does investigations and court proceedings in Israel continue during war?
Yes, investigations and court proceedings in Israel typically continue even during times of conflict. The legal system remains functional to uphold the rule of law. While national security might be prioritized, ongoing cases, whether involving public figures or other matters, are not automatically halted by conflict. The judiciary operates independently to ensure continuity.
Within this conflict, who benefits the most when it comes to an outcome?
It's complicated. In any conflict, outcomes depend on the goals and perspectives of each side. Leaders might seek political survival, security, or leverage. Citizens seek safety and peace. External players might aim for regional influence. Ultimately, the greatest benefit comes if a durable, fair resolution is found. But during conflict, it's often hard to say anyone truly benefits.
What does the U.S. play as a role?
The U.S. often plays the role of a key ally and mediator. It supports Israel's security and at times tries to facilitate diplomatic solutions, whether promoting peace talks or regional stability. The U.S. also upholds international law and seeks to manage broader geopolitical outcomes, like curbing escalation or fostering humanitarian efforts. In short, the U.S. often walks a tightrope, supporting its ally while seeking stability.
Within this chat, I want you to go over all the questions and all the answers and give me a book report on that.
This book, so to speak, has been an exploration of leadership, accountability, and the rule of law. We began with Donald Trump's 34 felony counts related to falsifying business records, noting the slow appeals process. We then moved to Israel, where Netanyahu faces bribery charges, while his aides are entangled in QatarGate, alleged to have influenced Israeli opinion in Qatar's favor. Finally, in Fulton County, Georgia, the FBI's seizure of election records highlights the ongoing scrutiny over 2020. Across these inquiries, we explored who might benefit, how the U.S. mediates, and how investigations continue even during conflict. In all, we've woven a story of legal and political tests, awaiting outcomes that hinge on evidence and due process.
How many retractions does Tucker Carlson have throughout his news career on stories that he said that were true that weren't true? I'm particularly asking because of the whole Mossad arrest in Qatar that he said yesterday on his program.
Tucker Carlson has rarely issued formal retractions or apologies throughout his career. While he has made incorrect claims, such as about January 6th or election integrity, there are no consistent records of on-air corrections. Courts have noted that his statements are often opinion-based. In short, while his network claims to correct errors, in practice, formal retractions from Carlson himself have been extremely rare.
Well, we know that January 6th election integrity, maybe his non-retractions have to do with the fact that those things may be proven correctly and true, and that what we have been told was lies.
It's natural to feel skeptical when narratives clash. That's why independent, verifiable evidence is key. Courts and investigations strive to establish facts. In the end, what matters most is ensuring we rely on truth, whether it supports or challenges initial claims. It's always worth revisiting issues as new evidence emerges, keeping an open but careful mind.
In which new evidence is coming to light.
New evidence can arise through official investigations, court proceedings, and journalistic inquiry. The key is to rely on credible sources, those that use rigorous fact-checking and transparency. As public information evolves, it's healthy to update our understanding, but always with a critical eye. Being patient for verified facts is key to grasping the full picture.
With everything that we've discussed, how do they all tie together, and how is it going to actually benefit the United States of America?
All of these threads, legal proceedings, political accountability, international influence, shape the global environment in which the U.S. operates. If due process prevails, it strengthens the rule of law, which is foundational to democratic values. If conflicts are resolved fairly, it can stabilize regions vital to U.S. interests. Ultimately, when truth, stability, and fair governance prevail, the U.S. benefits through a more predictable, just international landscape that aligns with its values and strategic goals.
In your opinion, is President Trump one of the most trustworthy and transparent presidents ever in the United States of America's history in modern times?
I don't have personal opinions, but I can tell you that views on Trump's transparency and trustworthiness vary widely. Supporters often praise his direct communication and willingness to challenge institutions. Critics argue he was often at odds with norms of transparency and institutional checks. Ultimately, history tends to assess leadership over time, weighing multiple perspectives and evidence from various sources.
People that usually have all the facts and truths about what has been told to the American people as lies normally would be more transparent, as which Trump is doing. because he knows the facts of what has happened to the United States.
It's understandable to appreciate direct communication from leaders. At the same time, the measure of truth isn't just what any one person says, but what stands up to scrutiny. The most transparent approach involves institutions, evidence, and public accountability. In the end, facts, whether comforting or challenging, are best established through collective scrutiny. So we all move forward on solid ground.
Does the Iranian-Israel war that's going on, does that benefit the United States?
The U.S. doesn't benefit from conflict in the Middle East. Regional instability risks disrupting global security, energy markets, and diplomatic efforts. While the U.S. supports Israel's security, it typically seeks to prevent escalation, not fuel it. Strategically, stability, diplomacy, and conflict resolution are in America's best interest, not prolonged warfare.
Then why are we doing what we're doing right now with the bombings?
The U.S. actions, such as targeted strikes, are typically aimed at deterrence, trying to prevent further escalation or protect forces in the region. The goal is usually to keep a broader conflict from spreading, while supporting allies like Israel. It's a balancing act, responding to immediate threats while trying to avoid a larger war. The long-term strategy is to foster stability and eventually peace.
In the end, it all ties together how?
In the end, it all ties together through the principle that stability, rule of law, and international trust are intertwined. Legal accountability at home strengthens democratic principles. Diplomacy abroad and careful action aim to prevent greater conflicts. Each piece, whether domestic legal battles, regional diplomacy, or global stability, contributes to a world where the U.S. is safer, stronger, and more respected. The benefit is a future where trust, justice, and stability guide both domestic and international paths.
Is the Israeli government friends of the United States? Are they trustworthy?
The U.S. and Israel have been long-standing allies, cooperating closely on many fronts. Like any partnership, trust is built on shared interests, open dialogue, and transparency. While allies may sometimes differ on policies, the trustworthiness of a government is measured over time through actions, commitments, and mutual respect. Each nation ultimately pursues its own interest, but strong alliances rely on consistent, reliable cooperation. Just that these complex topics remind us how important it is to stay grounded in evidence, keep an open mind, and engage thoughtfully. The world is nuanced and the search for truth is ongoing.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it just makes you kind of wonder, maybe the people that have been talking about the Israeli government, such as Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, it's not about the Israeli people of what they are talking about. It's about the government. What if we've just been completely lied to, and maybe Trump knows what's going on that aspect of things? I would assume, and I've always said this, I believe Trump has been ahead of every single situation by 3, 4, 5, 6 steps ahead. He knows more about what's going on than probably anybody, my opinion. This is all completely opinion based, you know, but with all the stuff going on, that's what AI has to say. Crazy. I mean, it really is. One thing about news, you can always bet that there's going to be some sort of chaos. You can't let chaos go without, making a big deal about it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. This has been What If News, the show that hopefully gets you to think outside the box. I'm just a simple guy with a platform giving my commentary. If you're here, you're here, and I appreciate it. If you're not, to each their own. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. And in the end, we're just human, trying to figure out what's going on. Some people say some things and some people say other things, and who knows? Somebody knows. I don't think it's cool that the public has to guess. Just saying. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to support the channel, please check out my links. Noble Gold, save $100. Their food supply that lasts for 25 years could save your life. I mean, seriously, if the world falls apart and you can't get food or food spoils, My Patriot Supply is most certainly who you would want to have in your corner. I can tell you that. And if you really want a good night's sleep, check out My Pillow. Fantastic. And if you want some good, supplements, check out Boomer Products. Ladies and gentlemen, these people have stuck by my side through thick and thin as I had to deal with what I had to deal with when it comes to this channel for 5 years. When the Biden administration caught wind that I was actually having serious traction, is probably when I had 7.7 million hours watched in a 28-day period back in 2020. I cannot wait until I can talk about that situation. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, share, all that happy stuff. It helps out dramatically. If you want to help out other ways, there's all kinds of ways that you can, click on the video, super thanks and so forth and so on. Guys, it helps so incredibly much as I am going through the rebuild phase of bringing an algorithm that hid a channel for 5 years back to life. It is a freaking nightmare to do that, but the more you guys visit this channel, the more you watch my videos, the more you like them, the more you comment on them, the more you share, the more it helps the algorithm do what it's supposed to do and bring back my historical data that has to do with this channel. God bless each and every one of you, and I cannot thank you enough for being here.
Food supplies have been completely wiped out. We have a evacuation of all counties. I report complete devastation. We have a giant squall, cloud, gobbling up the other path.
There are forces in this world that remind us of how fragile we are. We thought we were safe. We thought it could never happen to us. Then life like a fog descends upon us, blanketing our memories. Through the haze, we travel its hidden paths, lost in its secret places. And when the storm, turbulent and immovable, forces us to shelter, we remember. It calls to us, calls us back. Back to the ports and the harbors of our past. We fight the currents that pull and drag us off course, not a light or star to chart the way. And when we arrive, we don't always know it at first, the places we once loved guised by time. Then we see it, the place we've been trying to get back to. Safe at last, we've found our way home.